Ladies and gentlemen, let me take you into a story that sounds so unreal, so ridiculous, that you might think it was pulled straight out of a Hollywood script. But I assure you, every detail of what I'm about to share happened to me in the middle of a quiet suburban neighborhood run by one of the most entitled homeowners associations you could ever imagine. The story begins with nothing more than a simple disagreement, but it escalated into a confrontation so bizarre that fake police officers tried to arrest me at my own home. The irony: I'm not just any ordinary resident, I happen to be a trained FBI agent. And that changed everything. It all started when I moved into a new neighborhood, hoping for peace and quiet after years of working undercover in high-pressure environments. The place seemed serene on the surface: neat lawns, freshly painted fences, smiling neighbors waving as I unpacked my boxes. But beneath the surface, there was an HOA that liked to flex its power. You could sense it in the way the board members carried themselves, as if they owned not just the community but your personal life too. The first few weeks were fine. I followed the rules, kept my lawn tidy, and minded my own business. But the problems began when one of the HOA board members, a man I'll call Mr. Thompson, decided that my car, a government-issued SUV with tinted windows, didn't fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood. He sent me a notice demanding I park it in my garage, which was laughable because my garage was already full with boxes I hadn't unpacked yet. I politely explained I needed some time to organize, but apparently, my explanation wasn't good enough for him. Days later, I found another letter slipped under my door. This time, it wasn't just about the car. They claimed my mailbox wasn't regulation height. They claimed the color of my outdoor lights didn't match the approved HOA palette. And they threatened fines if I didn't comply immediately. Now, I've dealt with criminal masterminds, corrupt officials, and international smugglers in my career, but nothing could have prepared me for the sheer pettiness of an entitled HOA board. I ignored the intimidation for as long as I could. But then, one evening, just as I was preparing dinner, I heard a loud banging at my front door. I opened it to find two men dressed in what looked like police uniforms. They had badges pinned to their shirts, radios strapped to their belts, and one even carried handcuffs dangling from his side. They told me they were there under HOA authority, and that I was under arrest for violations against the neighborhood code. I almost laughed in their faces. Under arrest by the HOA, it was so absurd it felt like a prank. But they weren't joking. One of them actually tried to grab my arm, demanding that I come with them to the station. Now here's the thing about being in the FBI: you're trained to read people. And it didn't take more than a second glance for me to realize these men weren't real officers. Their badges were cheap knockoffs, their uniforms had no department insignia, and their so-called police car was nothing more than an old sedan with a magnetic light bar stuck on top. I calmly asked them for identification, knowing full well they had none. They grew defensive, saying they didn't need to prove anything because they were acting under HOA orders. That's when the entitled arrogance of the HOA truly revealed itself. They had actually hired or convinced these wannabe enforcers to intimidate me, to scare me into compliance. But what they didn't know was who they were messing with. I stepped back inside, pulled out my credentials, and presented my FBI badge. The look on their faces was priceless: shock, fear, and the sudden realization that they had picked the wrong house. One of them stammered something about just following orders, but I wasn't about to let it slide. Impersonating a police officer is a serious federal crime, and I had all the evidence I needed right in front of me. I told them calmly, "Gentlemen, you are under arrest. You've just attempted to impersonate law enforcement officers and unlawfully detain a federal agent. I suggest you sit down on my porch while I call this in." At first, they thought I was bluffing. But when I radioed the local police and gave them my credentials, they realized it was over. Within minutes, real officers were at my house, and those two frauds were handcuffed and taken away. The fallout didn't stop there. The police began investigating the HOA board, especially Mr. Thompson, who had apparently orchestrated the entire stunt. He thought he could bully me into compliance by staging an arrest. Imagine the entitlement required to think you have the power to invent your own police force just to enforce neighborhood rules. The investigation revealed misuse of HOA funds, fraudulent practices, and a pattern of harassment toward multiple residents. Many neighbors later confessed they had been too scared to speak up before, but once the truth came out, the entire board was forced to resign. Now, I didn't share this story just for the drama, though I'll admit it's one for the books. I share it because it highlights something bigger. Entitlement is dangerous when mixed with authority. Whether it's a neighborhood HOA or a corporate boss, when people in power think they can create their own rules without accountability, they end up crossing lines they should never cross. That night taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought against hardened criminals but against entitled people who believe they're untouchable. And just like in law enforcement, the key to standing up against them is knowing your rights, refusing to be intimidated, and standing firm when they try to bully you into submission. So yes, the HOA tried to send fake police to arrest me. Yes, I had to reveal my true identity as an FBI agent to stop them. And yes, it ended with justice being served. But more importantly, it showed me that entitlement can blind people so much that they forget the law, morality, and even common sense. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this: never let entitled people make you feel powerless in your own home, your own community, or your own life. Because when you stand up to them, you remind them that authority without integrity is nothing more than a costume, just like the fake badges those men wore that night.